What is human history? As it is told to us, is it the story of progress, of advancement, and of those who won? Or is it a narrative shaped by those who held power, and in doing so, shaped memory itself? We know evolution, we know the agricultural revolution, and how civilizations emerged. But what if this narrative is only the visible surface? What if the past is far more complex than what we are taught? Because in texts from the ancient world, within the narratives we see as myth, there is a striking commonality. Gods, angels, giants, and great catastrophes that fundamentally changed the world. But what if these are not merely symbolic stories? What if these narratives point to something far more real than they appear at first glance? When you step a little closer, at the edge of conventional history, another possibility emerges. An alternative history of humanity. A narrative that disrupts traditional knowledge and power-centered views of history. Perhaps this history was censored over time, forgotten, or deliberately ignored. In the late months of 1946, in the region known today as the West Bank, near the ancient settlement of Qumran, a group of Bedouin youths were grazing their sheep and goats. To pass the time, they began throwing stones they found nearby into the barren land. One of the stones thrown disappeared into the darkness of a cave. And a few seconds later, a sharp sound echoed from inside. The sound of something breaking. Driven by curiosity, when they entered the cave, they encountered large clay jars lined up on the ground. One of the jars was broken. They did not realize it at the time, but they were standing in the midst of a discovery that would change the course of history. Because inside the jars, there were ancient parchments that had remained hidden for centuries. In the years that followed, archaeologists, historians, and even treasure hunters returned to the same region. New caves were discovered, new fragments were brought to light. Eventually, manuscripts recovered from a total of 11 caves, approximately 800 to 900 texts, were brought together under a single collection. Today, we know them as the Dead Sea Scrolls. Among these manuscripts, there was also a mysterious religious book, long forgotten and absent from the official texts. Its name, Book of Enoch. For centuries, its name was known, but its contents were largely lost. Book of Enoch is composed of 5 main sections. The Book of the Watchers, the Book of Parables, the Astronomical Book, the Book of Dream Visions, and the Epistle of Enoch. In total, it is a comprehensive narrative consisting of approximately 100 chapters. These sections tell the story of Enoch, the 7th patriarch listed in the genealogies of the Torah. The father of Methuselah, the grandfather of Noah. Yes, the very same Noah from the flood narrative. However, it is not a story that tells of Noah's Ark as we know it. The Book of Enoch approaches the events leading to the Great Flood from an entirely different perspective. And at its center, it places beings referred to as the Watchers. According to some sacred interpretations, they are fallen angels. They are said to have been sent to Earth to watch over humanity, in a time ancient and undefined. But this mission does not unfold as intended. The Watchers do not merely observe humanity. Over time, they begin to desire human women. And this desire, according to the Book of Enoch, becomes a forbidden union in which boundaries are completely crossed. In the Book of Enoch, these beings are called Nephilim. In the Book of Enoch, the Nephilim are not described as ordinary beings. They are giants, violent, an uncontrolled force that threatens humanity. In some accounts, they are depicted as supernatural beings who ravaged the earth and fed on humans. This situation draws the anger of higher beings referred to in the texts as gods. The Watchers, as the price for what they have done, are chained in a prison beneath the earth, deep underground. And at this very point, Enoch's role changes. He is no longer merely a narrator, but a mediator between the gods and the imprisoned Watchers. The Book of Enoch describes his journeys between the heavens and the earth. That he flew alongside angels, that he saw rivers and mountains from above, that he reached the far edges of the world. According to the text, the world has now reached a point of no return. And this corruption will not remain unpunished. The verdict is clear, the Great Flood. This flood will destroy the Nephilim and seal the Watchers within their prisons for a time close to eternity. What is striking is this. The book of Genesis, which tells the story of the Great Flood, is not completely silent about the Nephilim. In the 6th chapter, they are mentioned with a brief yet striking description, the heroes of old, renowned warriors. This is not the only reference found within the sacred texts. In the Book of Numbers, the Israelites recount that in a land they entered on a mission of reconnaissance, they encountered the Nephilim. The account is so striking that, according to the text, these beings were so immense that the Israelites felt themselves like grasshoppers in their presence. Of course, today, many accounts in the Bible are interpreted allegorically. That is to say, they are often understood not as historical records, but as narratives carrying philosophical and symbolic meaning. But here, an intriguing convergence appears. Because throughout world history, archaeological and geological traces of a great flood have been found. And even more striking, flood narratives are not unique to a single culture. Across different continents, among different societies, in narratives unaware of one another, the same catastrophe appears again and again. But what about giants? If beings like the Nephilim had truly existed, would they not have left traces behind? But what if they did? Some researchers point to numerous accounts, particularly in North America, of extraordinarily large skeletons said to have been uncovered in the past. Would they not have left traces behind? In the late 19th century and the early 20th century, newspaper reports published at the time spoke of such discoveries. However, none of these claims are accepted today or verified by mainstream archaeology. According to these claims, in ancient times, beings of extraordinary size may have shared the same world with early human communities. Is it certain? No, but the question still remains, if none of these stories are true, why are they so widespread? And if they are nothing more than legends, why are their traces so persistent? These accounts are not limited to the American continent alone. Similarly, in the Amazon rainforest, in various regions of Africa, and in other parts of the world, claims have emerged of extraordinarily large skeletons being discovered. In fact, stories of giants are woven into every corner of human history. The famed traveler Marco Polo speaks of an extraordinarily powerful people of giants living in Zanzibar. He describes them as being so strong that they could lift alone a load that would normally require several men working together. In North Africa, within the accounts surrounding the founding of what is today the city of Tangier, another figure appears. The founder of the city is said to have been a giant named Antaeus. When we turn to Europe, along the coasts of Ireland, an extraordinary geological formation rises, Giant's Causeway. Located off the northeastern coast of Ireland, this structure, formed by nearly 40,000 interlocking stone columns, according to Irish mythology, was built by the giant Finn McCool. The purpose is clear, to cross the sea and wage war against another giant in Scotland, at Giant's Causeway. According to Irish mythology, was built by the giant Finn McCool. Similar stories emerge as well in Norse legends, and in ancient Greek mythology. Different geographies, different cultures, yet the same figure appears, giants. But can a narrative this widespread be nothing more than a product of imagination? If giants truly existed, and if countless cultures point toward this idea, then one question becomes unavoidable: what if the Book of Enoch is not as allegorical as we have long assumed? What if this text is not a work of pure fantasy, but rather a blurred reflection of a forgotten history? Interestingly, the Book of Enoch held an important place for centuries in both Jewish and Christian traditions. In fact, many sects considered this text sacred, and some regarded it as direct divine revelation. Moreover, some researchers suggest that the Book of Enoch may have inspired the Book of Genesis. Because between the two texts, there are striking similarities. The same characters, overlapping events, and parallel narratives. So then, what happened? Why is the Book of Enoch not a part of the Bible today? To answer this question, we must rewind time, back to the first centuries after the death of Jesus Christ. The Bible as we know it today was not yet a rigid canon, not yet composed of 39 books of the Old Testament and 27 books of the New Testament. On the contrary, at that time, numerous gospel texts, diverse teachings, and separate religious writings were all in circulation. As Christianity spread, the growing church was confronted with a critical question. Which texts would be read? Which would be taught? Which would be regarded as divinely inspired? And perhaps more importantly, which would be left out? It is at this point that history begins to shape not only faith, but authority as well. For a growing belief system, diversity, beyond a certain point, becomes a problem. The church had to establish order among different texts and different interpretations. A unity, a framework, an official canon. According to a narrative that has become popular today, this process took place in a dark and secretive manner. At the 4th century Council of Nicaea, this narrative became especially widespread with the Da Vinci Code. According to the story, Constantine the Great and high-ranking church authorities shaped Christianity's sacred texts according to their own hidden agendas. Historically speaking, the Council of Nicaea did not determine the final list of the Bible. The acceptance of texts was shaped instead by centuries of use, doctrinal consistency, and balances of authority over time. This claim is not limited to modern novels. In the 18th century, the philosopher Voltaire also expressed a similar view. So this idea is not new. Even if not identical, at the core of this narrative there lies a truth that is not false. Because high-ranking church figures did, in fact, make deliberate choices about which texts would be accepted. Debates took place, power struggles followed, and certain teachings were declared heretical. And yes, the desire to expand authority did play a role in this process. However, all of this did not happen in a single council or through a single decision. This was a long and complex process, stretching from the 1st century into the 2nd century. And according to general consensus, by the late 4th century, the canon had become largely fixed. Among these official texts, the Book of Enoch is absent. So an unavoidable question arises: how could a text this influential, even vital, according to some, be left out? The answer to this question is found not only in Book of Enoch, but also in other texts that shared the same fate. For example, the Gospel of Peter. In 1886, this text was discovered in Egypt. Only a fragment has survived to the present day, yet what it describes is extraordinarily striking. In this Gospel, the resurrection of Jesus and his emergence from the tomb are described. He is followed by 2 colossal angels, and behind them, a cross rises, and it speaks. In the text, a voice is heard from heaven: "Have you proclaimed to those who sleep?" And the cross replies, "Yes." Scenes like these push far beyond the boundaries of the official narrative. Another example is the Gospel of Mary. In this text, Mary Magdalene is not merely a follower of Jesus, she is someone who understands his teachings and transmits them to others. She is one of Jesus' disciples. In fact, in some passages, she is portrayed as his closest companion, the one he trusted most. In one scene of the text, Peter asks the following question: "Why must we listen to a woman?" The response is unequivocal: "If the Savior deemed her worthy, who are you to reject her?" The Savior knew her better than we did, and that is why he loved her more. Narratives like these shake established authority. They question hierarchy, they redistribute power, just like the Book of Enoch. These texts, too, tell extraordinary stories, and they disrupt the familiar framework of history itself. For this reason, it is not surprising that early church authorities chose to leave such texts outside the official canon. In fact, the very fact that the Book of Enoch did not disappear entirely could itself be considered a matter of chance. Because this text survived at all, it is due to one reason above all else: the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, which preserved it for centuries within its relatively isolated Jews tradition. Elsewhere, the text survives only in fragments. As far as we know today, the only complete pre-modern version of the Book of Enoch was written in an ancient language of African origin, Ge'ez. And perhaps for this very reason, the Book of Enoch remained outside the mainstream of history for centuries, yet it never completely disappeared. The version of the Book of Enoch we know today reached the modern world through a text translated into English in 1821. The man behind this translation was a clergyman serving in Ireland, Richard Lawrence. Lawrence, working from the Ge'ez language version preserved within the Ethiopian tradition, published the first English translation of the Book of Enoch. This work later became one of the key reference texts used in the study of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Yet what is truly intriguing is this: the Book of Enoch was excluded from the official Christian canon, gradually forgotten, and survived only within narrow academic circles, and still, the Bible has not entirely erased its traces. For example, in the Book of Genesis and Book of Numbers, there are explicit references to the Nephilim. Genesis also provides a detailed account of Enoch's lineage. In the Book of Hebrews, it is stated that Enoch was taken by God. This phrasing shows a striking parallel to the account in the Book of Enoch, where, before the flood, Enoch is taken up to heaven in a fiery vehicle. Even more striking is this: in the Epistle of Jude, a passage taken directly from the Book of Enoch appears almost word for word. This suggests that the Book of Enoch may have served as an early source of inspiration for canonical texts. And another intriguing detail: in the first epistle to the Corinthians, it is well known that Paul the Apostle urges women to cover their heads during worship. According to some commentators, this warning is rooted in a narrative from the Book of Enoch, the belief that the watchers were drawn to women with long, uncovered hair. Even if the Book of Enoch was removed from the official canon, if this is true, its influence was never fully erased. On the contrary, its traces continued to live on between the lines of the Bible. This practice continues to exist even today, within the Roman Catholic tradition and across the Islamic world. And even though the Book of Enoch was censored, forgotten, or pushed aside, in truth, it was never completely lost. Because what Enoch left behind is far more than a single text. The question now is this story merely a matter of canon? Or is it the reflection of a much older and much deeper memory? Some researchers suggest that Enoch, the seventh patriarch mentioned in the Torah, shares striking similarities with Menjerana, the seventh pre-flood king in Mesopotamian tradition. In the ancient Greek world, Enoch is seen as being identified with Hermes, the god who carries knowledge. The examples go on, and at this point, an unavoidable question emerges: why does Enoch, by whatever name he is known, appear again and again across different cultures of the ancient world? Perhaps the answer must be sought even further back, before the Greeks, before the Egyptians, even before the Babylonians, with the Sumerians. According to Sumerian tablets, in a very distant past, the earth was visited by supernatural beings. These beings are described in the Sumerian tradition in such a way that these accounts bear an unsettling resemblance to the depictions of the Watchers found in the Book of Enoch. This resemblance is the result of modern comparative mythology and alternative interpretations of history. And it is right here that the story begins anew. In the Book of Enoch, they are called the Watchers. But the Sumerians referred to the same beings by a different name, the Anunnaki. This name is commonly explained as those who descended from Anu. For the Sumerians, the Anunnaki are gods. In the modern era, however, some researchers view these narratives through a different lens. For example, figures such as Zecharia Sitchin and Eric von Daniken interpret the Anunnaki as an ancient extraterrestrial civilization. What is particularly intriguing is this: Sumerian tablets describe the Anunnaki entering into relations with humans, much like the Watchers in the Book of Enoch. From these unions, a new kind of being emerges. This account shows a striking parallel to the creation of the Nephilim. The similarities do not end here. According to Sumerian texts, the Anunnaki are dissatisfied with the state of the earth. And just as in the account of the Book of Enoch, the outcome is a great catastrophe, the flood. At this point, an unavoidable question emerges: what if the Book of Enoch and similar traditions are actually a retelling of a much older Sumerian story? Now let us fast forward time just a little further. Around 10,000 BCE, a radical transformation begins in human history. The agricultural revolution. Humans abandon the hunter-gatherer way of life and transition to a settled existence. According to historical records, by around 9500 BCE, in the region known as the Fertile Crescent, barley, wheat, and rye are being cultivated. Oats, peas, and lentils are cultivated. Goats and sheep are domesticated. Approximately 500 years later, the smelting of copper and lead begins. Textile production develops. Pottery is created. And even more striking, this ancient culture becomes one of the first human societies to develop writing. In other words, humanity, within a very short span of time, moves from agriculture to metalworking, from craft to writing. This sudden leap has, for centuries, given rise to the same question: where did this knowledge come from? And some say, perhaps this story is not one written solely by humans themselves. How did humanity, in such a short span of time, make such a profound leap? From a hunter-gatherer life, to agriculture, to permanent settlement, to complex civilizations. This pace cannot always be easily explained by conventional historical explanations. In the oral traditions of Upper Mesopotamia, there exists a striking origin story. In these accounts, they describe themselves as the children of the jinn, or descendants of the spirits. Does this narrative carry the traces of an ancient cultural memory? Some interpreters suggest that this may be a symbolic remembrance of unions between the Anunnaki and human women. According to Sumerian tradition, the Anunnaki are not merely ruling beings. They are also teachers who bring advanced knowledge and technology to humanity. From this perspective, the advancement of human civilization is not solely a process of independent discovery, but also a guided process. This idea is often linked to the following question: if everything can be explained by cultural and social conditions, why do certain structures remain unexplained? For example, the Giza pyramids, or Teotihuacan. These monumental structures display extraordinary engineering and planning. And according to some, they are incompatible with the known social and technological conditions of their time. Perhaps because of this, some theories argue that behind these structures, non-human knowledge played a role. When we return to the Book of Enoch, we encounter another striking parallel. In this text, the Watchers, just like the Anunnaki, teach knowledge to humanity. Metallurgy and mining, science and medicine, reading and writing, understanding the sky and the stars. Even the use of cosmetics, the crafting of jewelry, and the secrets of the art of war. In the 8th chapter of the Book of Enoch, it is specifically stated that Azazel taught humanity the making of weapons and the working of metals. But the text does not stop there. It states that this knowledge also brought corruption along with it. Knowledge carries danger as much as it carries progress. And the question emerges once again: is the Book of Enoch truly nothing more than a religious allegory? Or is it a reflection of the Anunnaki narrative within another culture? Interestingly, the most frequently cited example of unexplained structures is once again the Egyptian pyramids. A medieval Arab historian, al-Makrizi, writes that the pyramids were built by a king who lived before the Great Flood. The name of this king is Sauron. According to this account, the pyramids are not merely tombs, they are the stone-solid form of lost knowledge. There is one more intriguing detail. The name Sauron, as recorded by the Arab historian al-Makrizi, is sometimes identified with Enoch, sometimes with Idris, and at other times with Hermes, treated as the very same figure. In other words, could the wise king who lived before the flood, and Enoch, who was taken up to the heavens, be different reflections of the same figure across different traditions? In a striking passage found in the Book of Enoch, Enoch uses the following words. According to some commentators, this narrative is more than a simple depiction of nature. A symbolic language, it is suggested, is being used, one that speaks of energy, of power, and even of electricity. This interpretation intersects once again with the Anunnaki narratives. Because some modern theories claim that the Anunnaki attempted to transmit this kind of knowledge to humanity through different means. One of these, that has emerged across the world in recent years, is crop circles. Within these formations, it is claimed that complex mathematical ratios, magnetic field patterns, the field lines of electrical charges, and even designs resembling mechanical systems can be observed. According to some, these are encoded expressions of an advanced technology. Of course, such claims are not accepted by mainstream science. But the debate does not end here. If we return to the scene in which Enoch describes his journey to meet the gods, we encounter the following words: I was taken to a kind of floating palace. It was immense, like carved glass. The floor was made of glass panels, and when I looked below, I could see the stars we were passing. This description bears an unsettling resemblance to modern UFO narratives. And inevitably, the following question arises. Before the flood, the fiery chariot that took Enoch into the heavens. What was it, really? A metaphor, a vision, or an advanced vehicle described in the language of its time? Perhaps what is truly astonishing is that such disturbing stories of the Watchers, of the Anunnaki, of the Nephilim, despite being told across different cultures for thousands of years, have, over time, been almost completely forgotten. The Sumerians have been pushed to the margins of the history of civilization, and the Book of Enoch has been excluded from the sacred canon. But perhaps the stories were never lost. Perhaps they have simply continued to live on, in another language, under another name. When we consider that these stories are powerful enough to fundamentally shake human history and redefine what we call human, their exclusion is perhaps not surprising at all. But what if they were never erased? What if they were simply hidden within another story? At this point, let us return to one of the most familiar narratives. Adam and Eve. Let us read this story neither literally, nor merely as a moral lesson. Let us consider it as an allegory. God creates Adam and entrusts him with the duty of watching over the earth. Much like in the Book of Enoch, where the gods send the watchers down to the world. From Adam's rib, Eve is created, and together, they multiply. Could this union be a symbolic counterpart to the union between the watchers and human women? In the garden, everything is permitted to Adam and Eve. With one single exception, the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. But the prohibition is broken. Knowledge is taken, and there are consequences. When we read this scene alongside the Book of Enoch, the parallel becomes striking. Because in the Book of Enoch, it is said that the Watchers revealed to humanity the eternal secrets hidden in the heavens, knowledge for which humans were not yet ready. Just like the fruit of the tree of knowledge, knowledge illuminates, but at the same time, it carries a burden. And perhaps, what was forbidden was not knowledge itself, but its timing. From this perspective, the story of Adam and Eve in the Book of Enoch may be two different tellings of the same memory. And perhaps this is the real issue. Perhaps, those who wrote the story of Adam and Eve were not creating a new narrative at all. Perhaps they were retelling the accounts found in the Book of Enoch, reframed in their own language. And maybe, if we go even further back, to the Sumerians, to the story of the Anunnaki, they were doing what so many cultures have done before, retelling the same memory, in a different form. They turned these stories into allegory, and placed them within their sacred texts. Perhaps the goal was not to hide the knowledge, but to preserve it. So then, what is human history? Is it only what is officially approved, written in history books? Or is there something far deeper, far stranger, something that was forgotten a very long time ago? Maybe the answer was never truly lost. Maybe it was always right in front of us. Only under different names, through different stories, it was being told. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to click the like button. And if you're new here, subscribe and turn on the notification bell to stay updated on future videos.